P-Valley just wrapped its second season, but for the past month and a half, I have been catching up because I'll admit I am late to the P-Valley train.
Nah, bro, how you gonna be late to the paint? Uncle Clifford rule number 1,758 million. Never be late to the paint.
Well, what do you think of the show?
P-Valley was a great show. Had so many layers. It was so many layers.
You being one of the biggest rappers in the world, I'm pretty sure you must have went to some pretty crazy strip clubs.
I've been to some crazy strip clubs. You right about that. But I ain't never been to no pink. Ain't nothing like the pink.
P-Valley takes place in Chucalissa, Mississippi, where the audience character is Haley Lakeisha Savage, who comes across a strip club called The Pink, which is ran by Uncle Clifford, and she interacts with the other strippers like Mercedes and Keyshawn, who have their own story arcs. But Haley runs a scam of ripping off mob dealers by changing IDs until her past comes back to bite her in the ass. But the family she finds in The Pink protects her, and all the money she made, she saves The Pink from an auction, making her part owner of The Pink. And in season 2, where they incorporate the pandemic, she struggles to keep The Pink afloat, which causes a rift between her and Uncle Clifford. Overall, this is just one of those shows that just works because it highlights the strip club life in a way that we have never seen before, in my opinion. This is one of the realest looks into a strip club life, but the show also works because of the characters and the actors playing, such as Erica Johnson as Haley, J. Alphonse Nicholson as Lil Murder, Shannon Thornton as Keyshawn, who had a really good story during season 2, but to me, the two standouts on the show was Nico Anand as Uncle Clifford and Brandy Evans as Mercedes. To me, Nico Anand is the best actor on this show because he just a joy to watch. Every word out of his mouth is just pure gold because he is basically a gender fluid pimp. Mercedes, in my opinion, is the best character because she just has an arc where you are rooting for her and feeling sorry for her. Katuri Hall, who is the creator of the show, really put her foot into the visual style of the show. It is both flamboyant, sexy, and gritty at the same time. She really put her foot into the writing and production of the show. If I had any gripes, it's just the first season did start off a bit slow, but once it got going real quick. Season 2, on the other hand, is where I felt the show really started to find its stride, and I loved every minute of it.
That Mercedes experience, ooh-wee.
Oh yeah, that Mercedes experience indeed. I'm going to give P-Valley the hard eyes emoji. Before I continue, yes, I did watch Pretty Little Liars. That original show was my guilty pleasure show for a long time, from when I was in college and even into my adulthood, until the show ended in 2017. I recognize the show was not perfect, but I like a good murder mystery, and most of the cast made the show fun, despite some plot contrivances. All that said, I was skeptical about this fourth rendition of the show because there has already been 2 spin-offs of Pretty Little Liars, and those shows didn't make it past 1 season. Given all the changes happening at HBO Max due to the merger of Warner Brothers and Discovery, I'm skeptical about the show's future, and I'm just at a point in my life where I am just over high school drama. But what piqued my curiosity was the fact that the show's creator, Marley King, is not the showrunner like she was in the original show. Instead, they brought on one of the writers from the show Riverdale. After watching, I am here to report that this show was actually good and at times better than the original, particularly because it's on HBO Max, so they can make use of the TV-14 rating and tackle subjects that will be triggering for some audiences. Other notable good things about this show is it takes place in the Pretty Little Liars universe, but doesn't focus on characters from the original show. These are new characters that are being tormented because of something their mothers did in the past when they were in high school. That alone is intriguing enough. No disrespect to the original girls, but I love that these new set of girls that are more diverse. I especially love the girl that is a film nerd, played by Chandler Kenning, and her mother is played by Sharon Leal. Ever since I saw her in movies like Dreamgirls, This Christmas, and Tyler Perry's Why Did I Get Married, I am rooting for her every time I see her in stuff. Give this woman more work. But anyways, I'm getting off track. Pretty Little Liars Original Sin was a lot better than I thought it was, and if you're a fan of the original show, I recommend it. I'd say it improves upon the world that author of the books, Sherry Shepard, built up. I'm gonna give Pretty Little Liars Original Sin the hard eyes emoji. Only Murders in the Building just wrapped its second season, and I am here to report that it is better than the first season in my opinion. I felt the first season had a good start but kinda sleptwalked during the middle half and didn't get interesting until the very end, but here the show seemed to have found its stride by making every episode focusing on a specific character and how they tie into the case of who killed Bunny. Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez carried the show with their chemistry and rapport that they have with each other. Cara Delevingne was a great addition to the show. The Bunny, Lucy, and Michael Rappaport episode were some of my favorite episodes from the season. I won't spoil the season finale, but where they left it off to set it up for season 3 was a great tag and has me more enthusiastic about season 3 and where they can go with it. This was a fun little show that had me excited every week for a new episode, and watching Gomez, Short, and Martin together on screen was a joy to watch because of the generational divide. I'm gonna give Only Murders in the Building season 2 the hard eyes emoji. Prey is the latest film in the Predator series that was released on Hulu over the weekend, and I am here to report that it is the best movie since the original Predator. Whoa, Xenomorph, what are you doing here? Yeah, I just never came across finding a Predator Funko Pop. Yeah, whatever helps you sleep at night. And besides, I've always preferred the aliens over the Predators anyway. But when the two of you are fighting, I'm kind of rooting for the Predators. So Prey is a prequel set in 1719 when predators come down to Earth and hunt for sport, then comes across the Comanche tribe. Among them is a young woman who wants to prove that she can hunt. Now, right off the gate, let me just say there is no overabundance of female empowerment in this film. We actually see her struggle and be resilient against not just the predator, but her male peers. Amber Mid-Thunder plays the young woman Naru, and she kills it in this film. The Predator itself is just as menacing as it was in the original, and some of the other sequels except The Predator. Now, my overall history with the franchise, AVP was my first exposure to The Predator. I had never seen any of the originals until 4 years ago when The Predator was getting ready to come out. I bought the box set and marathoned all of them. Now, the first one, classic. Second one, okay. Predators, the second best since the original. And The Predator, well, less said the better. Prey is a welcome addition to the Predator franchise because it's new, original, and inventive for the franchise in a way that future movies can go in many directions now. My only gripe about this film is that it does slow down in the middle half, but when the movie gets going, it gets going. Especially when the Predator comes on screen, and it's just a joy to watch him rip skulls out and skinning them to the skull. If I were to nitpick, I'd say the Comanches speak a little too fluent English, given the time period it's set in. Now, I know there were some Comanches that learned English when the colonizers came in and took them, but this is a little too fluent. Though there is a Comanche version of this movie that you can watch. Just a nitpick though, nothing serious. I highly recommend this film, and I'm gonna give Prey the thumbs up emoji. Elvis was released in theaters a couple of months ago. It was supposed to hit HBO Max on August 8th, but due to the merger between Warner Brothers and Discovery, things shifted, there's new leadership, and they just decided to wait to put it on HBO Max and just release it via POD. Now, because I don't have a Funko Pop of Elvis Presley, I decided, you know what, the next best thing is Stitch, because the soundtrack to Lilo and Stitch does have an emphasis on Elvis. So, how you doing, Stitch?
Oh, Stitch is good. How are you doing, Maverick?
Doing good. Now, Tony, what do you think of Elvis as a musical artist?
Stitch loves Elvis. You know, because Elvis will love Stitch. Because I'm a blue suede hound dog.
Indeed you are. And what did you think of the movie Elvis that was just released?
That was pretty good. Elvis was nice. The movie, it was okay. Tom Hanks, he's a funny guy.
Well, let me tell you what I thought of the movie then. Elvis is directed by Baz Luhrmann, who is a very visual director. And I have liked most of his movies, though I have never seen Moulin Rouge or Australia, but I do like his take on Romeo and Juliet and The Great Gatsby. And the visual flares he brought to those movies work in this biographical film about Elvis Presley because it makes his larger-than-life persona seem more flamboyant and bombastic and in your face, especially when it came down to his signature dance moves, because there is a difference between knowing and understanding, and it wasn't until this film I understand why those moves are so iconic and controversial. Now, for Elvis himself and what I think of him, look, I have never been a huge fan of Elvis, especially given his cultural appropriating ways, but he does have some songs that I do like, mainly because of the Lilo and Stitch soundtrack and Looking at You, Suspicious Mind. But I do feel like this movie did a good job at illustrating that Elvis indeed gets his influences from black music and did it tastefully. Plus it also helps that you get a good performance by Austin Butler, who becomes Elvis, and you really believe that the King of Rock was risen from the dead through this performance. Like, he is not doing an impression at all, like he actually became Elvis. Austin Butler also did a good job at showing the more troubled side of him, because he was financially abused by his manager, Colonel Parker, played by Tom Hanks. I thought Hanks did a good job at showing how despicable and manipulative he was to Elvis, and let's be real, most managers did that back in the day. They really did a good job of showing how manipulative and shady he is, and how shady managers can be in general, especially during that time period, and still goes on today. But more importantly, this movie did show how much of a bad motherfucker Elvis was, admittedly. I did not realize how bad Elvis was, and this movie made me feel that. My gripes about the film would have to be that the film is a bit too long. I felt they could have told this story a little bit more tighter, and some of the musical sequences kind of dragged on, and we did a lot of time jumping from time to time that they just brushed over certain things, mainly his marriage to Priscilla Presley. I feel like they really didn't put enough emphasis on that given the controversy surrounding that and their age difference, or any other important events in Elvis' life. Regardless, this turned out to be a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It's a great film that celebrates the life of Elvis Presley and his cultural impact, whether you like him or not.
Stitch can dig it.
Stitch can dig it? I guess Stitch can definitely dig it. I'm going to give Elvis the thumbs up emoji. Samaritan was released on Amazon Prime over the weekend, and I have been looking forward to it because this is one of those movies that I have heard about for a long time.
Hey, that puppy looks just as good as me.
I'm sure he does, Lego Rocky.
You know, this movie is like my other movies. A retired superstar is all old and grizzled and don't want to be bothered. But something or somebody inspires her to come back and relive the glory days.
You can kind of say that, but this has a superhero filter over it.
A retired superhero? You're Adrian! I'm a superhero!
You're a hero in our hearts indeed. Samaritan is a story about a retired superhero who must come out of retirement when a new enemy hits the street, and he kidnaps this boy that he befriends, and he brings him back to the superhero life. But then some secrets are revealed pertaining to his past and his evil sibling, which he fought back in the day. This movie reminded me why I think Sylvester Stallone is at his best when he is a dramatic actor rather than an action star. And I like him as an action star, but it's his dramatic and quiet moments he gives us that makes us connect with his humanity that Stallone is able to convey in his performances, like this. And that's why we love him as Rocky Balboa, especially in the later Rocky movies. Javon Walton, aka Ash from Euphoria, plays well off of Stallone, and I love the camaraderie they have with each other. Now, this movie is not perfect. This film was supposed to be in theaters, but they reneged, and I can see why. Some of the effects are questionable. Some of the other actors, particularly Palu Aspiak, forgive me if I mispronounce your name, was overacting. I understand it's a superhero movie, but that doesn't mean act like a cartoon. All that said, I enjoyed this movie, and it was a lot more violent than I thought it was going to be, but that just proves how much more Sylvester Stallone has left in him. I'm going to give Samaritan the thumbs up emoji. With She-Hulk hitting Disney Plus this weekend, I wanted to revisit the solo cinematic outings of the Hulk, starting with 2003's The Hulk, directed by Ang Lee, which was the first theatrical outing of the Hulk. Bruce Banner gets hit with gamma radiation and unleashes something that was already inside him, which is tied to his traumatic past. He turns into an enormous Green Range monster, and everybody is after him. Now, as for Ang Lee and what he did for this film, I'ma say the same thing about him what I said about Tim Burton and his Batman movies. This movie is proof that Ang Lee has never read a comic book in his life, but he can take comic book characters and put them in his style. Except the difference here is that Tim Burton's movies are fun, but here, Ang Lee tried to make it some pretentious art house movie about a Green Range monster that smashes things, which is not what audiences were asking for. But this film does has its merits, like Eric Bana as Bruce Banner, crazy-ass Nick Nolte as David Banner, And I actually like Sam Elliott's take on Thunderbolt Ross, and at times was better than William Hurt's, respectfully. Ang Lee did bring his visual take to this world of the Hulk, even though I felt he overdid it with the weird transitions, just to make it look like a comic book. I'll admit the CGI Hulk was groundbreaking at the time, back in 2003, but watching it now doesn't completely hold up. But there are some scenes where it had me fooled, particularly in the scenes with less lighting. Jennifer Connelly was one note throughout the film. The Hulk action was cool. This is the only film we see the Hulk swing a tank and haven't seen it since. Come on, Feige, let's see the Hulk throw a tank. My biggest gripe about this film is that it's too long. The pacing was off at times. In the end, I will always have a spot in my heart for this film because it was the first, and it does have its redeeming qualities. But to me, even for a comic book film, it still has its flaws, and those flaws are huge flaws. I'm gonna give Ang Lee's Hulk the shoulder shrug emoji. Continuing and ending my Hulk deep dive with The Incredible Hulk, which was supposed to be the sequel to Ang Lee's Hulk, but Kevin Feige and Edward Norton came in and basically changed up everything to incorporate the Hulk into the then jump-started Marvel Cinematic Universe. To me, this is the superior Hulk film because it was simple and to the point. We see the origin story in the credits, and now we are with Bruce Banner trying to find a cure, but Thunderbolt Ross and the military are trying to catch him, and once Bruce is reunited with Betty Ross, things go wrong. And he hulks out and he eventually fights the Abomination. I love Mark Ruffalo and his contributions to the MCU, but to me, Edward Norton is Bruce Banner. Not only Edward Norton was good in this film, but I like the clear difference between scrawny Bruce Banner and huge Incredible Hulk. William Hurt, rest in peace, plays Thunderbolt Ross and the only character from this film that is not replaced to show up in future MCU movies. So far. Speaking of Tim Roth, he is great in this film as the Abomination. I prefer Liv Tyler as Betty Ross. She just had more of a sense of urgency than Jennifer Connelly in the Ang Lee film. I like this version of the Hulk because he is more savage than all the other Hulks, even Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. Of course, the early MCU Easter eggs was just mind-blowing because at the time when this came out, nobody didn't even realize that Bruce Banner was trying to recreate the super soldier serum, which was shown in the Captain America movie, the first film. And there's a mention of S.H.I.E.L.D. here and there, and of course, there's that iconic end credit scene where we see Tony Stark, especially after seeing him from the first Iron Man, and this came out the same year as that first Iron Man. In the end, this is the better Hulk film, and it's just frustrating that we haven't gotten the Hulk movie ever since because Universal still has the rights and they just can't crack the code on how to make a great Hulk film, but this will always be the film where they got the Hulk just right. I'm gonna give The Incredible Hulk the hard eyes emoji. With Orphan First Kill being released on Paramount Plus over the weekend, I wanted to revisit the original because I remember liking it when it came out, and 13 years later, I'd say it still holds up. Orphan is a horror thriller about this family that adopts a little girl named Esther who seems wholesome at first, but then starts doing some nefarious and suspicious things that catches the mother's attention, and when things get worse in the third act, spoiler alert, it is revealed that that little girl is actually a grown woman with a rare hormone disorder that causes proportional dwarfism, so that allows her to pose as a little girl so that she can trick the rest of the family until she is left alone to seduce the father. But once he refuses, she goes crazy and kills everybody. So yeah, I couldn't talk about how I feel about this film and the next film after without spoiling the big twist, which is what made this movie for millions others, which is probably why this film is still held in high regard for a lot of people. Isabella Fuhrman plays the title role, and it's crazy. At the time she was only 12 years old, and she was able to portray an adult woman that poses as a little girl as convincingly as she did. Vero Farmiga plays the mother. I remember this being the first film I ever saw her in, and given this film and seeing the trajectory of her career after this film, it does make sense why she was in this movie. She plays a mother that figures everything out and is in distress to protect her other children and convince her husband, who is played by Peter Sarsgaard, who is the biggest idiot in this film, and the character you want to choke for not listening to his wife. I also love the cold and noirish aesthetic of this film because it makes the movie feel more stressful and isolated. Obviously, I dig this film and I love rewatching it. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you like it. It is a good horror thriller. I am going to give Orphan the hard eyes emoji. Orphan First Kill was released over the weekend on Paramount Plus. It is a prequel to the 2009 film Orphan, and here it takes place a couple of years before the events of the first film, where we see Elena, who is a grown woman with a hormone disorder that causes proportional dwarfism, allowing her to pose as a missing little girl once she escapes the insane asylum. The little girl she poses as is Esther, which is how she got her name in the first film. Though the family of the little girl she poses as is not what they entirely seem. Now, right off the bat, this movie does look a little ridiculous because Esther is played by the same actress from the first movie, and she is much older than she was in that first film, so watching her play a grown woman posing as a little girl is just ridiculous. I can even tell the scenes where she is clearly on her knees to make herself look more shorter than she actually is. And I'm just like, come on guys, y'all really didn't have to do this, y'all really didn't have to make this movie. But then the movie has a twist that I won't spoil, but it just changed up my entire perception of this movie up to this point. And because of that, I thought, oh wow, this is a lot better than I thought it was going to be. The cast is decent. Isabella Fuhrman returns as Esther, and she's still good in the role despite the fact that she is much older than she was when she made that first film. Julia Stiles is a great addition to this movie. It's nice seeing that she can still get work. But the twist does involve her, and once you see what it is, you're like, oh my god, what? The film does maintain the same aesthetic that worked for the first film. Now, because of all that, I'm gonna give Orphan First Kill the thumbs up emoji. Top Gun Maverick was released digitally last week and I missed out on it in the theaters, so I thought now is a good time to marathon them both. But the reason I missed out on it in the theater was because I was just not a huge fan of the original classic, despite how much people love it. I just could not get into it because I am just not a fan of movies with aerial battles, except if it's Star Wars, which I know it's not a fair thing to say, but that's just me. I have no problem with the gay subtext that a lot of people have made it out. In fact, I think it's just hilarious. Especially after you hear Quentin Tarantino's take on the film. The movie overall just didn't age well to me, but that's on you to decide. Despite all that, I will say that Tom Cruise does carry this film with his charisma. All the stuff with him and Kelly McGinnis holds the film up, as well as the camaraderie he has with his other male co-stars such as Anthony Edwards as Goose. They are also the heart of the story, especially given what happens to Goose during the middle of the movie, and it takes the movie for a slightly dark turn. Val Kilmer as Iceman is yet another iconic character in this film, and the camaraderie he has with Tom Cruise in this film is amazing and hilarious at the same time, if you know what I mean. Look, I don't hate or dislike this movie, I just don't care for this movie, but after watching the new movie, my views on this film has slightly shifted, but that's only because of the second film. But more on that in my next review. But I'm gonna give the original Top Gun the shoulder shrug emoji. And I know that is a little harsh for this movie given its iconic status, but hey, me personally, that's just how I feel about this movie. So yeah, I'm giving Top Gun the shoulder shrug emoji. And until next time,
you can be my wingman anytime.
Top Gun Maverick was released digitally last week, and after rewatching the first film, my opinions on that film have not changed. But then I watched the sequel, and I can see why this film is held in high regard. I can see why this film is one of the best of the year. I can see why this film made $1 billion. This is yet another example of how a legacy sequel should be done. This film is not only better than I expected, but it improves upon the original in many ways by making it a continuation. Tom Cruise did not miss a beat by returning to this character that he played over 3 decades ago. He teaches some young fighter pilots to take out some nuclear weapon by some faceless enemies, and among those pilots is the son of Goose, played by Miles Teller, and their friction and coming together is the heart of this story. But it didn't overtake the movie as well. The aerial scenes are much better than the original. In fact, this is one of those times I wish I had seen this in the theater to experience all the flying scenes. But more importantly, unlike most legacy sequels, it respects the legacy of the first film while also improving elements. Glenn Powell, Jennifer Connelly, Jay Ellis, John Hamm, and Monica Barbaro are amongst some of the other standouts. This film was also directed by Joseph Kosinski, who directed Tron Legacy, which is another sequel that was decades in the making. This seems to be his niche because he knows how to make a long overdue sequel and also improving upon the original. Beforehand, I was not enthusiastic about this film, but after watching it, it is within my favorite films of the year, and I'm gonna give Top Gun Maverick the hands up emoji because it is a masterpiece. Beast was released in theaters, and I wanted to watch it because I had heard about this film a year in advance, and I was instantly sold. Idris Elba fighting a lion, so basically The Grave with Liam Neeson, only instead of a wolf, it's a lion. Sold. Now, of course, there is more info than just that. He is stuck with his little girls. They are being haunted by the lion, but anyways, it's just a fun, simple premise. Nothing more, nothing less. Just a fun survival movie that has filler with scenes that rely on underwritten characters making dumb decisions. That being said, the relationship between Idris Elba and the young ladies playing his daughters carries this film. Sharlto Copley is also a second standout, and he is their guide in the film until he is injured and separated from everybody. You gotta know what you're getting yourself into with this film, and I recommend you watch it with an audience, both in the theater and at home whenever it hits streaming. I'm gonna give Beast the thumbs up emoji.